not exist.
And we do also look at the international media for a lot of times, Richard, for indication of where public opinion does stand globally. And in the last 48 hours, I would say, from the ceasefire, it was mainly a game of rhetoric. Who broke the ceasefire first, under what circumstances? And now that we're back to, as Yossi said, Friday morning is exactly like Sunday morning in terms of events. We're at the same place where we really were. What is the international media going to now look for, perhaps, or take on from this past event? Hadar Goldin is now being pronounced dead. He's not kidnapped. It's not something that's going to change the nature of the war. And we're basically back at square one.
The international media will continue to blame Israel for everything. That has been the game for the longest period of time. A total disregarding that the Palestine Liberation Organization is a terror organization. It has used terror. It has used threats. It has used activities both on the battlefield, in the air, hiding people behind human shields, shooting from hospitals, shooting from schools, violating international legal warfare norms.
But they're also going to probably look at the numbers that are rising. It's 1,700, the Gaza Health Ministry put it at as of late, and the pictures coming out. They're going to say, look, what has Netanyahu really achieved for the security of Israel? And how can it, of course, explain the 1,700 dead?
Every nation state in the world is entitled to defend itself. In fact, its primary obligation is to defend her people. Mm-hmm. And that's what Prime Minister Netanyahu and the State of Israel have done, is insist that notwithstanding the diplomatic activities that try to keep Israel held down to a different standard, Israel has the right and the obligation to defend her people. When she was taken to the International Court of Justice at The Hague 10 years ago, the accusation was that the terrorism fence is an apartheid wall. It's an attempt by the international community to paint Israel as an apartheid racist criminal state. And the issue of diplomatic warfare, the issue of battlefield warfare, the issue of terror warfare has to also be viewed in the context of the past and the coming legal warfare against Israel.
But of course, now that the war is hopefully, or it's going to be dwindling down, hopefully in the next few days, maybe weeks, the legal implications are now going to be rising up. Does this mean that people such as yourself who have represented victims of terror, what kind of evidence are you going to be looking for, or taking tangible evidence that you can use in international courts or in federal courts in the United States?
In the federal courts in the United States, under the Anti-Terrorism Act, litigation is appropriate and is ongoing as it relates to sponsors of terror, people who fund, people who support, people who provide material support. That means organizations, it means foreign governments that are on the state sponsor, the list of state sponsors of terror, and it means others who provide the mechanism and the means and the incentives and the rewards to commit terror and murder.
Right.
But in the legal warfare context, we have to take a look again at the International Court of Justice advisory opinion of 10 years ago that totally disregarded Israel's respect for human rights and Israel's own High Court of Justice decision as it relates to the fence, concentrating on humanitarian issues. What we can expect now is an onslaught at an attempt to get at the International Criminal Court, and part of that is the plan of the PLO and the PA to bolster themselves in the international community, to say, well, we really are a state, recognize us as a state, give us status with the Rome Statute, let us bring a case. That all has a double-edged sword, because the fact of the matter is, if the International Criminal Court hasn't been willing to take on the issues of the massacres in Syria, one must also understand that when the Palestinians seek status at the International Criminal Court and want to bring charges, that double-edged sword means they will have to answer, how can they possibly use children as human shields? How can they possibly launch missiles from hospitals? How can they possibly abuse their own people? There has to be accountability, and Israel is not the culprit that should be held accountable for the activities that have brought us to where we are. It's the terror and the constant terror that's that's been going on and continues to go on and sadly will continue.
But Arad, we looked over the weekend, many of the foreign journalists that were in the Gaza Strip, and there was maybe highlighted by the social media the fact that many can't report on what they would have been seen or what they've been witness to until they leave the Gaza Strip. When you look at the reporting from around the world on this conflict, one can say that it has maybe evolved throughout the conflict into trying to present this other picture. It's just they basically cannot.
See, they work under restrictions in Gaza. There's no doubt about it. They have to worry Hamas because Hamas is not a democratic entity. It's a rude entity. It's a cruel entity, and you know they don't enforce free journalism.
Right.
We have to understand this. On the other hand, the pictures that come out of Gaza, the destruction, the numbers of the deaths, of the injuries, you know, these are not made up. Mm-hmm. Yes, they make war crimes. They are war criminals. They hide in hospitals. They hide in schools. They hide among civil population, and this imposes very, very difficult decisions and very difficult. I don't have another word for it, but it's a difficult situation that Israel is in it. You know, ABC News in the United States during the weekend revealed a recording of Bill Clinton just before 9/11, 2001, revealing or saying to a group of friends that in the late 90s he, as a president, had an opportunity to kill Osama bin Laden. Mm-hmm. The problem was, he said, that in order to kill him, he had to wipe out the whole of Kandahar and kill 300 people. Now, if he would have killed them in the late 90s, maybe he would have saved 3,000 Americans on 9/11. So that's the decision, that's the dilemma that we are stating it in every other day. A
Finnish reporter, this was a part of the segment that was running around the social media, did a report about rockets being fired here. You can. This is the segment that was, I think, shared throughout the world, and of rockets being fired from the Shifa hospital. This is, of course, her report is in Finnish, so I will not attempt to translate right now. Yossi, when you look at the objectives that have been achieved up until now, and of course where Israel is going to leave, and the international, of course, media that's going to at least be with the unilateral withdrawal until it actually leaves. What can you say that the IDF can say, yes, we have a decisive, crushing victory over Hamas, and here's the areas that we did actually were victorious over Hamas?
When we measuring the success of this operation or war, we have to measure it against the goals stated by the cabinet. And the prime goal was to bring calm back and peace to Israel.
But we've seen that it's not going to happen.
Well, we'll see. That was the prime goal before the ground incursion. Once the ground incursion took place, the cabinet stated another goal: to demolish, to destroy the tunnels. That is going to be achieved tonight. In the long run. Hopefully. Well, no, it's going to be achieved. I'm not sure all the tunnels would be uncovered.
And that's something that the defense minister has said. There's no one that can say that.
But you see, there is no limit to it. Israelis have a very short memory on one end, and on the other hand, then they mixed and confused tactical events with the overall strategic picture. That happened in 2006. During the war and immediately after the Second Lebanese War, Israelis were in desperation. They were frustrated. 8 years later, we see that strategically, despite the flaws and the tactical misunderstandings, that war was a successful war. There is a peace and quiet. 8 years, peace and quiet to the Galilee. I think Hamas was defeated, suffered major casualties. Its major projects have been uncovered and demolished. The tunnels, the rockets have been reduced to 1/3. There is already a demilitarization of Gaza. Why? Because they cannot bring weapons inside Gaza.
Although they have been able to up until now.
So I think deterrence will work, but of course it's, you know, I'm not a prophet. I believe that a deterrence of 3-5 years would be in place.
And Hamas will accept this isolation for 3-5 years?
Well, the siege would be lifted. That's part of the deal. The siege would be lifted. The border crossing would be opened under better inspection.
And
remember that Hamas is the Islamic resistance movement. They will continue resistance in every possible way. They're not only in Gaza, they are elsewhere. We will see activities, God forbid, in the West Bank.
Just break. Thank you all for joining. We're going to be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to i24 News Morning Edition. Of course, we are in a special broadcast this morning. It is day 27 of Operation Protective Edge. Rockets have been sounding throughout the south of Israel since